Hey, it's Scott Weiss with Lessons on Leaving, your complete guide to funerals. Today we're inside a mausoleum at a local cemetery, and just going to tell you some options that you have when you decide to be buried. If you decide to be buried instead of cremated or donating your body to science. Number one, you can be buried in a conventional cemetery. You're not only going to have the cost of the casket, most cemeteries in urban areas are going to require you to have a vault or a grave liner, it's called. And what's going to happen is the casket will go inside of a vault, inside of a grave liner, or a grave liner will be placed over the casket. And what that is to prevent the ground from caving in as the casket deteriorates over the years. Many cemeteries do not have those requirements. It's not a law anywhere. It's simply a requirement of the cemetery. That requirement minimally is going to add about $750 to your bill. It could be $10,000 if they decide to talk you in, or if you decide to get a copper or a very expensive vault, which the casket is going to go in. Like I said, most cemeteries in rural areas do not have those requirements, and yet the ground stays level. Isn't that something? So I'm not saying it never occurs, but in general, it's not necessary to have a grave liner or a burial vault. It is simply another huge added expense to the whole cost of the funeral. If you decide not to be buried in the ground in a typical cemetery, you can be placed here in a mausoleum. I've got some full-size mausoleum where people are inside the casket, inside this spot here, the mausoleum right here. Also, we have the niches for the urns, so you can be cremated and then be placed inside a mausoleum if someone feels more comfortable. But there's so many options that you can do with the cremated remains of your loved ones, and we'll talk about that in the future. The third option in burial is to be buried at a green cemetery or a natural cemetery. And that's where you're not going to be involved, and there's no metal involved in the casket. It all has to be natural ingredients, and we're going to talk a whole lot more about natural burials because it's a huge movement. I want to say in 1996 the first green cemetery opened in Great Britain, and today there are almost 300 green cemeteries, and we're seeing a huge movement of green cemeteries here in the United States. And so we'll talk more about that. We'll probably even visit one of those as time goes on. But again, you can be buried ground out traditionally in an urban cemetery, a regular cemetery. You might have a family plot where you can be buried. You can be buried in a mausoleum. You can be buried above ground in places that are below sea level, like New Orleans, and of course in my home state of Louisiana, where you can walk right through the cemeteries that are all above ground. Of course, there's many stories, and you can take cemetery tours that if you ever visit New Orleans and hear the background of those as well. But anyways, lessonsonleaving.com. Please go to my website, subscribe. If you're not subscribed to my website, you won't get everything that I'm offering out there on tips, information, educational advice. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, but please give me a response, a thumbs up, a thumbs down, like it, don't like it, ask questions, and look forward to talking to you next time. Have a good one.